Hi everyone, welcome to techintalk, and we will continue the map post discussion regards to minimal API in .NET 7. Obviously, we have developed a post endpoint which was receiving the user model from body, the request body. And before modifying this or starting this topic, let's rerun this endpoint to see where we have left that discussion. So if I click on run, we are getting the ID 10 and the name is post test from the response of this endpoint /use. As we can now receive the data from request body, and this is custom data type, and as soon as we pass any object from here, and we can receive it as a model request parameters. What are the other ways? Same as for the get endpoint, we can receive the data from the query params and as well as the part of the URL. How we can do that? Let me quickly show you guys. For the query param, we can get the let's say for the name, can receive username from the query string. I just modify that endpoint, and I just use that post call from here, and let me replicate here down here. And if I pass name is equal to Osman, and I need to rerun that API once, we get the error. Required param string user was alright. That should be user. Sorry, my mistake. And if I click that one, now we can get the content user as we have passed Osman, and we are getting the response Osman from that endpoint. So that was one way. As I said, same as we did for the get endpoints, we can get the username from the URL as well, and that would be the user name, and we need to pass that in the response as well. Let me press Ctrl F5 and see the results now. If I reuse this one, and instead from passing as query param, if I just pass that one as a part of the URL and run the request, I should get same user from the response, and that's it. So this is how we can get data from a map post. There are three ways for now we have discussed: from the model, which will be coming from the request body, from the URL, and from the query param. From the headers, we can't get directly from the headers. Why is that so? Because minimal API doesn't support that one. So if you guys have used the old API, you must have seen that attribute that is from header. Right, so we can't do that here in that minimal API, but what we can do is we can just remove this one, the request params. Instead, what I can do is context, what should be request context. What should be what is the name of the, I think that is HTTP request. Yeah, that is HTTP request. Yeah, okay. And then now let's get the HTTP request value within that endpoint, and we can manipulate that request to get the headers from that request out. Let's say in the request we pass a custom header. Like if I replicate again this request, and I just remove this, and in the .http file we can pass the headers like as a key pair values under the URL. Which what I mean is that if we want to pass a custom header, we need to add its name, let's say test, and its value. This is a test header like this. And let's write some custom logic here. Header is equal to request dot headers dot first dot default, and I would like to query that header where key is equal to the test. Alright, and I just want to return that test header from that request. Let me confirm the name, that was test. Alright, and let me rerun the minimal API, and now if I click on alright, the ambiguous match multiple endpoints, alright, /user, alright, that's fine. So there are now two endpoints which are ambiguous. So what we can do is we just slightly change this endpoint's name. Let's say /user/header. Alright, and here I can just use header, and if I run this request, you can see now I can now get that header in the response. Right, so this was the header we have passed test, and the value was this is test header. You can see key value pair are now getting in the response. If I just change this one to something like a unique key and run it, you can see we are getting the change value from that response. So this is how we can pass headers from within that http.http file, and within map post request we can process those headers as well. So this is a case why I demonstrating this scenario, because this is a case where we need to pass API keys in the headers. Let's say you have a minimal API which is only for a few one or more endpoints, and you want to control the access through API key. So this is the way you can process those headers, and you can check from within that endpoint. We will come later how we can add the middlewares. So basically this should be part of the middleware where we should double checking the headers or any credentials. But for now, let's assume if we want to give access on the basis of headers, we can write over header logic here, and if that header is matching, we can give the result.ok response like this. And if that's not, we can just use some other unauthorized status codes, right? So let's say the key is not matching and we want to unauthorize that user. That should be like this. And if I now hit that endpoint, I should be getting, here you can see for one status code unauthorized, which means it is not authorized to that endpoint. Right, so this is how we can process those headers. Okay, yeah, from results, I do prefer typed results instead of only result, because type result is a factory on top of iResult, right? So I always do prefer the type results class to send back the responses. For the post one, that should not, from the standards perspective, that should not return a JSON object. That should return typed results dot created, right? And it should return the path where that unique user has been created. User / normally we find user on this its ID, so we can say it's users. Let me add string manipulation user.id. Alright, so this is how we should return a status code of HTTP 201 instead of 200. And if I just rerun that API and hit that user endpoint, now I should be getting status code of let me double check where I have put that, users from body. Alright, it means some of the endpoints are again conflicting. Alright, I haven't written that one, my bad. Return, that should be fine. Let me press Ctrl F5. Okay, if I now rerun that, you can see this is 201 created. That should be the status code for HttpPost request, and now you can see there is another value coming in the response, that is location, and it's saying that a new resource has been created on /user/10 ID, right? So whenever we pass that ID on the user's endpoint, we should get the newly created user. So this is how we should return the responses. So let's update that one across the whole program.cs file. So that should be type results dot OK for test, and again type results dot OK like this, and I would like to again try to wrap this all the get requests in the OK response. And this should be the part of your regular operations. Whenever you have wrote some chunk of code, you should always run a refactoring cycle against your code. Again the OK, again the OK. That was all regarding the OK, and now I would like to add time results related to user. Alright, and name. Alright, so now we are returning type results from all those endpoints, which is good. And to double check that, let me just run all those endpoints once. Okay, I'm getting the content 200, 200, 200, again 200, 200, 200. Now this should be series of 201, 201, 201 and 401. Alright, that's right. So now we have refactored our minimal API, and I would like to add at least two more regions. API setup and region. So we have done the API setup in that region, and region starting the API. Whatever we need to start the API should be enclosed here. Alright, so we have refactored our API a bit more, and finally I would like to move that one DDD record inside a separate folder, if that makes sense, just to clean that code. I will name it to records, and I would like to cut from here and new class user. Alright, and we need to update the references here like this. Alright, everything is fine now. So that was all about covering some basics of HTTP post requests. So in the next video I will be touching HTTP put request, its use case, where we need it, and how we should send, or what status code we should send in the response. So that was all from this video. In case of any question or query, do ask in the comments, and happy coding.